Welcome back to Wondour, guys. My name is James Hsu. I am the CEO and co-founder of VRLU, a 360 VR application that we built. Actually, thanks to this gentleman right here, my partner in crime, Mr. Dylan Stroud. How are you, brother?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. We are excited because, one, I'm excited to always talk with one of the managing partners of Wondour, number one. That's why I'm excited. But number two, I get to ask you the question that is getting millions of searches a day, that everybody's wondering, and there's probably not even one correct answer to this question, but we're going to deep dive together, brother, and find out.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Dylan.
Yes.
What is the Metaverse?
What is the Metaverse? Yeah, so that's definitely a great question. A lot of people, you'll see them throwing around the term, and there's definitely a lot of confusion around exactly what that is, where to find it, and why it's important. You know, at its base level, the Metaverse is just a term that's similar to cyberspace that was coined in the 1990s for the World Wide Web. So the Metaverse, at its basic principle, is really just the next evolution of the internet. And so, you know, one of the core innovations in the Metaverse that most people think about is it's the internet also with a 3D layer applied to it. And so, just like there's not one player and place on the internet, there's going to be many players and many locations in the Metaverse, which are effectively taking the principles that make the internet useful and applying various new technologies along with, you know, the changes that come from adding that 3D layer to it.
Is it fair to say when we talk Metaverse, that is referring to something on your head though, a headset of some type? Maybe not today as in 2022, but the idea, though, is to have a headset on to enter a world, yes?
So actually, no. So believe it or not, the Metaverse can be accessed from traditional devices as well. But the best way to experience the Metaverse is definitely in what we call immersive technology. So that's going to be things like virtual reality, augmented reality, and HMDs devices. These are head-mounted displays, things like virtual reality headsets, and augmented mixed reality XR devices. These are examples of things that can use pass-through cameras where I can still see the real world out in front of us in our field of view, and then project actual softwares and products into your field of view. Whereas virtual reality completely blocks your field of view and puts you in a completely virtual environment. And so immersive technologies like that exist, and then also you know, there's advances that are happening with pure pass-through screens, right? We're looking at like augmented reality glasses, things where you're going to actually be able to walk through the world, see the real world around you without camera pass-through or anything like that, and also have these sort of products and services you know, developed, designed, and implemented into your field of view at, you know, unique times for yourself.
Probably over 100 million people have seen the movie Ready Player One. And I think most people, when they hear the concept of Metaverse, they think they want to give this as an example. Do you think that is a good example of what to think of the Metaverse?
I think there's a lot of fantastic inspiration in there. So one of the common misconceptions is that there's going to be one world, which is something that sort of in that movie and that film, they definitely make it feel like there's one world. But if you pay close attention, you're actually jumping between a variety of different experiences, you're socializing with different people. And so the more important thing is that you have what's called interoperability, which is, you know, you can take an avatar from one experience to another. You can jump from worlds developed by completely different parties all across the world, whether that be, you know, through the internet or various apps. So I do think that the vision of that film and the original stories are definitely a really good inspiration for getting a sense of like what kinds of experiences are possible in gaming and socialization. It touches a little bit on work in the Metaverse, but not a ton. Really, again, it's just the 3D internet, so there's a ton in productivity that's going to happen as well from, you know, companies that are already in software as a service. And pretty much every company that was affected by the internet will also likely be affected by this 3D layer being added on top of it.
So I guess one of the questions that I have personal interest in, and I'm just going to use these companies as an example because it's 2022 at the time of this recording, but do you think with the evil conglomerate businesses, let's just say Facebook, now Meta, has already entered this sphere. They said, hey, we're putting in $10 billion a year for the next 10 years or something like that, $100 billion, something like that.
Very large investment.
So let's say that they go through all that and stock doesn't continue to crumble and they're able to fulfill this Mark Zuckerberg's dream of what he wants, okay? And then and I'll just use these as an example, even though I don't know. And then Apple will make their version. Let's just say, for example's sake, Amazon will make theirs, and then Elon will make his version. We'll just use these because these are the big companies.
Sure, yeah.
Do you actually think that on a laptop, yes, I can go to Facebook.com, I can go to Apple.com, and it's a seamless experience because I'm going through different pages. Do you actually believe that I will be able to have an avatar? And I assume, and please correct me because I don't know, I would be entering Meta, and then I want to leave and then go to Apple's version, whatever Orange, whatever they want to call it, and then Elon's. Do you actually think that I will be able to be in one world without stopping? And it'll all synergistically work?
Right. Yeah, so great question. So that is actually one of the fundamental challenges of the metaverse today, which is, again, that interoperability, being able to take, myself and instantly transition between these types of environments. Just like the internet, right, these are sort of like walled gardens, so Apple may have its own ecosystem where there's developers developing for Apple that maybe or maybe not they push to other devices, right? You do have many app type experiences. Facebook, for example, that you brought up is on both iOS and Android for Google and Android phones. And so I think you're going to see a reach of products and sort of these walled garden experiences where you have a corporate entity that's controlling their version of what is effectively metaverse technology, right? But it isn't the metaverse. They're a major player in the metaverse, but and so what we typically think of as metaverse technologies are things like these immersive 3D spaces where we have socialization, there's things to do, entertainment, productivity, whatever those things are. And so in terms of jumping in and out of those walled gardens, I think that definitely very much depends on
greed.
Competition, let's say. What are their interests? Facebook is doing a lot of the hard work right now, and now Meta, in terms of, hardware is very hard. And shrinking these HMDs, the head-mounted displays, to a place where they're sort of ubiquitous eyewear is a really important component, right? It used to be we would carry around 15 objects in order to get the same value that we get just out of our iPhone, right? We would need a compass, it'd be like 15 things to carry around. And so it's happening, we're seeing these shrink very dramatically, and so that plays a major role, as well as different computational limitations that we have today with things like cloud streaming for processing. We definitely need to reduce the size of these before I think we hit what most people envision as that final version of the metaverse. But again, the metaverse is more akin to the internet, right? So Facebook is on the internet. Apple has apps that are on the internet or use the internet. And so the metaverse is the internet with a 3D layer that applies, our core senses, visual. We evolved in 3 dimensions. We eat, live, sleep, breathe in 3D. This is the way we learn. This is the way we interact with our world. And so all of those products that we typically use, the games that we typically play, especially if you're looking at things like iOS or Android, mobile phones, laptops, we're very much limited by the input method of like a finger or a mouse or a thumb. And so opening up that input method to being finger controls and hand controls, where I can reach out and play with menus, or I can grab a screen and I can increase the size whatever I want.
Minority Report.
Yes, yeah, it's a fun thought, right? That stuff is real in terms of productivity. You can have a 180-foot screen in front of you if you want to, or have 2 of them, as long as we can do the processing. So I don't know if I believe that there's going to be one world. I think the understanding is this: pretty much the collective of humanity that is trying to build this future they're all going to carve out their specific niches. There's going to be a lot of fundamentals that we need to figure out. When you open up an iPhone app, you get familiar with the operating system. You understand how to work the interface. It feels intuitive. But there are differences between Android and the way that we interact with the web. Really, the core innovation there is just making sure that these players build these really valuable and useful spaces, and then making it really easy to access these places. And so one example of that you can start to conceptualize to wrap your head around it is sort of like the new version of a browser, right? Like today we surf the entire world's information on a browser. We can jump between experiences. You can start to think about what a singular version of a metaverse might be in the sense that you can visit a website. It recognizes that you're on an immersive device, and within that space it generates now you enter into a 3D environment where you can see people, you can watch them walking around, you can see their motions. That won't always be the most useful, but it's definitely something that's possible. So I do think we're moving in that direction, but there's some constraints on the hardware, there's constraints on interoperability in the sense of bringing my digital assets, which is a really important part of this, is just the digital economy, right? Is what do we purchase for like avatars or clothing or worlds or games or software as experiences? What kinds of tools and assets can I use? Finger tracking for typing on my real world keyboard so I can have 5 monitors that I didn't have to purchase if I want to. As these technologies develop out, I think we'll see a lot more people understanding the metaverse to be more of like the internet, right? It's not where is the internet? The internet's on many of your devices. And I guess one last thing there is, it's also important to note to your previous question, which is people definitely will primarily use the metaverse, or large portions of it will use these immersive devices. But there's already really great examples today of metaverse-like experiences where you have these shared social worlds where people are doing fun things. And if you don't happen to have a device, you can log in on your laptop and control your avatar like you would in a traditional game. And so really it's going to be up to developers and to the public to decide. A really critical and crucial component of this is you don't want technology to get in the way. Right? And so if you develop a metaverse type experience, you want that to improve the experience. It's not, otherwise it's just overly complicated for no reason. So situations like if you want to watch a movie at home on Netflix, or now we can watch it, I can sit next to you while we're watching the movie on the big screen and we can look at each other and laugh, or play chess while we're watching the movie. These are, while being on opposite sides of the world, this is an example of the types of experiences that are possible, that are worth doing in that case.
As you talk, I keep on thinking, history often repeats itself.
Right.
And if we're basing it off of today, and I don't know if you would agree, but Apple and Meta aren't the greatest friends.
Sure.
We'll say that. They're not the greatest friends.
Yes, plenty of competition.
One of the reasons being is their issues on privacy and information.
Right.
And Apple, on their stance, is very, your information is yours.
Right.
Facebook, whether it was on purpose or not, Meta's reputation, at least I feel within the circles that I congregate between, don't trust Facebook.
Sure.
A lot of people do not trust them because of different leaks and different things that we find out about Facebook. And we actually know some developers that are anti-Meta and do not even want it available on Oculus or Quest or whatever.
Right.
The reason why I bring this up is because, do you believe that some of the speed bumps you're mentioning, some of the hurdles, will be these things where Apple and their ecosystem just cannot get along with the rules and regulations that X company, I don't want to say Meta, but any, X company, Amazon's version, may not have the security features that they're okay with, which will bring up this barrier wall that won't allow these worlds that ideally would be nicer if they all got along, but won't.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's there's definitely space for differences of opinion here, not necessarily on the privacy piece, but just in general in terms of approach, because the sheer number of people trying to create their vision creates, this sort of boiler room where you sort of like polishing a rock. There's a lot of pressures that go on to find what is the correct answer that's maybe hard to see today, right? Hindsight's always 20/20. But in terms of figuring out the correct answer moving forward, I do think that that's going to be a challenge for people. And I keep bringing it back down to the internet, just in the sense that, iOS might have its walled garden of experiences where you go into the Apple ecosystem and it may not be compatible with, the Meta ecosystem in terms of the way that they handle privacy. I think there's good reason for the concern with the way that people are, how people feel in the public perception of privacy over at Meta. They're doing incredible work to push virtual reality forward in the hardware and in the software space, trying to develop design standards. But they do have that reputation, and a lot has come out that I think is cause for concern. And realistically, virtual reality in and itself has its own set of data points that are potentially concerning for security. For example, just putting on a headset, we can determine who you are by just knowing the way that you move, how far away your hand position is from your head. There's even been examples.
That's crazy.
Yeah, there's even examples of people not having access to your microphone that can. The gyroscope is so sensitive, the head tracking is so sensitive that they can detect micro motions when you're speaking and map that to the alphabet. So, for example, we need these protections, we need these security things. You don't want people being able to not even have access to your microphone but know what you're saying, because they can. So there's things that many people don't know that we need to we need to bring up along the way as we build up the metaverse. Just like any tool, there's good ways to use it, there's bad ways to use it. And I think there's going to be differences of opinion as you look at how, like you said, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, or Meta uses it moving forward. But again, it's all the internet, right? So just as there's differences of opinion and different uses on the internet, it's we need to bring up public awareness and then also recognize that these companies are going to try to create as much value as they possibly can in each domain. And so people will move towards the one that is most useful for them or most productive, or they like the privacy model. Maybe one is simply just better hardware. So it's a good part of the conversation that we should definitely be having is the security component, privacy.
To go along with it, Dylan, and I say this in my speeches all the time, and I've never actually got to ask you just because I always forget to ask you. Do you think, and I don't even know if this is true, I just blurt it out in my live speeches. No one ever contests what I say, so I don't even know if this is true.
Sure.
But I feel that, so you have all these players in these digital worlds, right? And then you have Apple at the time under the leadership of Steve Jobs coming out with definitely not the first smartphone, but the first smartphone to really make the blast, right? The iPhone comes out, then the whole world decides, okay, smartphones are here and let's move forward with that. And then, in my opinion, Facebook missed that whole thing. I don't think that was on purpose, but they missed the whole thing. They have no hardware, they don't have their own phone versus Google and Android. They get to control their own ecosystems versus Facebook is only an app within their ecosystem. And so Facebook came out with their ads, right? Their Facebook ads, which has done a lot of, has generated billions of dollars for not just businesses, but also for a Facebook entity, and has helped them become the powerhouse that they've become. So the reason why I mention this is because they keep on having to pivot, right? And they keep on having to, all companies, they need to keep on pivoting to what the market says that people want to buy or people have interest in, and people want to do X, Y, Z, or ABC on these platforms, smartphones, things like that. Then Facebook makes the move and buys Oculus, now Meta. Do you think over the next 10 years, 15, 20 years, that with ads going down because of the Apple getting in the way, right, and being annoying, then Google now follows suits. So ad revenue is going to be down. Not to say that that can't go back up again. But do you think over the next 10, 15, 20 years, with their pivoting, that they can fulfill their dream of what this metaverse is supposed to be, or do you see some trouble for Meta?
Yeah, so I mean, I think this is
plus the reputation.
Right, and the reputation is definitely a hard thing to earn back that trust. And they're trying really hard, but I think people have genuine reason to be concerned right now, and hopefully they can change that behavior. It's a great question. Starting to the first part of the question, really.
Yeah, I gave you a lot of layers.
Yeah, no. The first part of the question, really, you can look at a lot of companies that missed out on the smartphone market in general, right? This is a common problem with innovation, like Microsoft, right? Microsoft was very well positioned, probably arguably more, better positioned to get into the space. BlackBerry already had their.
Have you seen the video of Steve Ballmer asked by a reporter, did you see that iPhone is charging $1,000? And he literally laughs at it.
Yes, exactly.
No one's going to pay that. And Steve Ballmer literally is on camera, and it's just like, that did not age well.
Right, yeah, exactly. No, and that's a common thing, right? It tends to be that the incumbents of any industry get very comfortable with what they're doing, and that if it's not broken, don't fix it, or they come from a very specific set of beliefs and skills that brought them to where they are. And these things move very quickly, and they're accelerating. So like one thing to consider is, in terms of predicting the next 10 to 15 years, I hesitate to say, just because it's actually predicted that in the next 10 years we'll have over 100 years of innovation. We'll experience that much innovation in the next decade, and so it's very hard to predict where that is going. But I think it's safe to say that we'll have a little bit of all of it, and we're going to have some good, we're going to have some bad. There's going to be plenty of challenges. There's going to be a lot of new people who are going to come up who understand this vision, who push this forward. But yes, I do think the main players are going to like Meta. First off, one of the major hurdles for the metaverse right now is definitely the immersive technology. The costs of hardware are very expensive, and so getting that technology consumer ready, it's already consumer ready. I think last year the Quest 2 was like the most gifted Christmas gift, I think, of the year, which was amazing. Really exciting for us because we love virtual reality. But as these devices get smaller and smaller, that's still an opportunity for other hardware players like Apple to come out with these sort of devices. Facebook at the time had tried to do the mobile phone. They made some efforts in that space. But the key really is just understanding that the first and foremost issue is which piece of hardware are they on, right? Because Facebook could have its own device, and then Apple doesn't control that device. So if you're on a Meta device, then you're going to be under Meta policies in terms of security. But if Apple does come out with a virtual reality headset or an augmented or mixed reality XR, then you're going to be under their policy. So it's definitely good that you look into these things, you understand the consequences of these for yourself, your children, whatever those things are, and do your best to just be informed and buy into the Metaverse hardware. Immersive hardware that you believe in, pursuing. So I think there'll be multiple approaches, and eventually, the hardware is definitely getting smaller. The software is getting more and more amazing, and it's being proven again and again how valuable VR is for things like learning, just general attention. Is incredible changes there. So I think we'll see pretty much the whole gamut. Hopefully, I would say that the main thing that we just need to do is just, again, keep everybody educated as we move through this, so that if you do buy into an ecosystem, you understand those concerns if it's something that concerns you with privacy.
Just like they often say, competition is good.
Mm-hmm.
So supposedly during WWDC at the time of this recording, Apple is going to announce at least their VR headset set to release sometime next year,
right,
if that timeline is accurate.
Right.
Then in the works is Apple Glass. The Glass is using AR.
Right.
When it comes to Metaverse, is there one that is more essential when it comes to VR and AR, or is it really going to have to be a mix of adoption rate for both for the Metaverse to work properly?
Right. Yeah, so this is definitely a point of a lot of discussion among the Metaverse community. Many people fall into both camps. I generally tend to believe that there will be best experiences in both. Right now, the vast majority of Metaverse experiences, virtual reality experiences, are virtual reality, just because the nature of augmented reality, again, the hardware is not quite there yet. Pass-through technology and actual augmented reality devices, as those mature and they get smaller, lighter, and more performant, I think we'll see a lot of very different uses for that maybe are less useful for virtual reality experiences. And there will be a blending. We all kind of, again, just like we have a bunch of different devices that come down to now we just have these smartphones that we bring around with us. Virtual reality headsets can shrink. They can shrink to a point with like cloud streaming where they don't even need, eventually, right? They won't even need as much processing power, so they might get very small as well. But there are certain things that...
Small as in the size of looking like nothing more than glasses? That's actually VR?
I think so, right. I mean, we used to have rooms that were computers. Their entire rooms were computers. So, they're now in our pocket and they're much more powerful by significant margins, right? And I think I can't remember the exact estimate, but computers are going to, like $1,000 computer is going to have like the compute power of the human race not too far from now, which is a little scary, right? Things are which is amazing though. So yeah, so will they get smaller? Absolutely. One important factor here, though, is things don't just get better on their own. People need to be working on them, but they can. So as long as people continue to believe in the vision and see the importance of this, see where it's useful, where it's not, and then it will definitely continue to innovate. They will get very small. But there might be limitations, physical limitations to the size. At any given point, augmented reality hardware, you definitely want to maximize your field of view of the real world. Whereas, with virtual reality hardware, you can definitely block out things like behind your hand, which might be, more useful for different circumstances. So virtual reality right now is definitely more games. It won't always be games, right? Like productivity is going to be there, entertainment, socialization, anything that you would do out of home is still a very useful thing to do in virtual reality today. It's really big, a lot of opportunities there. Fun things like playing pool or climbing or whatever you go out to do, mixers. There's tons of opportunity in that space. Augmented reality, I think, is probably going to start off being a little bit more practical in terms of practical use cases, right? If you're driving,
texting,
GPS,
weather updates.
Yeah, and timed notifications. Hopefully not in the central vision, right? Mm-hmm. Somewhere where we can very easily control.
Lower right hand.
Right, but we spend a lot of our time doing this these days. So the benefit of a lot of this spatial technology, geospatial technology, is like we can kind of get back to lifting our heads back up and being in the world, right? That's one of the main components of this 3D vision is like it is the way that we live, and so bringing these digital products that are amazing, right? You used to have calendars and then on your physical wall, and now we use calendars on our phones that we can share a calendar. I can magically see what you're doing, and you can see updates as they happen. We can have as many people on that calendar as we want, as many details. And that was not possible before on the wall. What's interesting about augmented reality is it really does give us the opportunity to bring the calendar back to the wall if we want to, right? And bring a physical component, which is what we're used to, there, which is, it's an exciting idea. Yeah, if you get, mapped to the ground, you can see arrows pointing you in the direction you need to go while driving. So I think it'll be a useful tool. There will probably be better use cases for both, but I do think there's a very real space for both in the metaverse.
Are you a fan of Black Mirror?
Yes. So, I mean, the outcomes, no.
Yeah, not the outcomes, the show.
Yes, yeah, the show, I think they did a very good job on that show.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching the visionaries of what, a lot of the augmented reality, a lot of the future episodes, and it's kind of scary. There was an episode, I don't remember the title, but it was one of the award-winning ones where you need people to like you to get a high, it was like a Yelp score, but in real life. And, we look at it and we shun it and we say no, but that's very real. Right. It's a very real thing.
Yeah, so we definitely want to be conscious of the potential consequences, both social, physical. There's a variety of things that there's many possibilities, future possibilities. So we definitely want to navigate towards positive outcomes, right? And so while we do this, I think it is important that we have conversations, understand the aspects of our consciousness that are have the opportunity to be taken advantage of, right? Sort of hack your cognition in a way that makes you, that does harm, right? There have been a lot of studies on the effects of social media, and there's questions there. So I think it is something as a community we need to think about and just make sure that we don't move towards a dystopian future of the metaverse, and we actually move towards something that's very positive. And again, that is a very possible thing to do, right? Just like any tool, you can use it for good or you can use it for bad. So it's just important that we have the right people working with the right intentions and understand what our shared values are in terms of where is our attention. I think a lot of people get the visual of people, just living in a headset all the time, and that generally is not a good thing to visualize, right? And so again, that's about shrinking, getting into augmented reality, and not inundating ourselves with just the sheer, because today we have more access to information than the kings of old, all of us, and so dealing with the cognitive effects of that is something that I think we're still working out. What are the consequences of the second you have the impulse, you just find yourself looking at your phone accidentally, right? There's widespread internet addiction and technology addiction. So, and these are only going to make that piece that much more real of an issue that we need to deal with, while also providing a really, really deep amount of value for a variety of different communities, bringing people together, giving people much more human experiences. In virtual reality, going from pancake experiences to actually feeling like we're next to each other when we can't be with our families, or if we're in a hospital bed. There's the intrinsic emotional value that can provide is hard to actually articulate. But on the other hand, if there's real addiction, and there are people today that are dating in virtual reality. They're actually visiting, thousands of different worlds. They're watching movies together. They're getting married in virtual reality and out of virtual reality from meeting there. And most people don't realize that. And we need to start thinking about those consequences and, how do we feel about that as a society? Because it's happening. It's, people will be people, whether they're in the metaverse or on the internet or in person. And each new innovation brings forward new aspects of humanity that I think we should be aware of and start to think about and really pay very close attention to make sure, again, that is a positive outcome.
Mr. Dylan Stroud, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
I had a blast talking with you. If you guys would like to join our community, our phone number is 702-602-8802. Any questions, comments, concerns for myself or Mr. Dylan, feel free to ask us. We'd love to communicate, chat, and talk about tech or anything else you guys want to talk about.
If you have any other questions or you're curious to learn more about Wondour, you can look us up on wondour.com, WONDOUR.com.
Do us a favor, push that like button, subscribe to this channel, share this video with anyone that may have a love for the metaverse also like we do. And until our next episode, we'll see each other soon.